Well, we just got the most recent jobs report, and guess what? It's not looking good. Looks like the US economy and really the global economy is continuing to falter like we've been saying. And it's funny how, they try to always turn this stuff into a positive because they say, well, the economy added 142,000 jobs in August, so that was better than July. And also the unemployment went down to 4.2%, so this is fantastic. But they know that that's not true because we also just saw the June and July jobs numbers get revised down an additional 86,000 jobs, guys. So anybody who looks at this most recent jobs report from August, 142,000 jobs added, and somehow thinks that this is fantastic, just wait until the revision comes because it's going to be lower, just like all the previous jobs revisions have been. I mean, we just saw a major revision going back to the beginning of the year where it was over 800,000 jobs less than what they previously reported. So you know that the revisions are going to keep coming in and it's going to keep looking bad. So now a lot of people are wondering if at the Fed meeting next week, if there's going to be a 0.5 point rate cut instead of a 1/4 point, because this is really bad news for the labor market. And Jerome Powell even said in a recent conference that further weakening in the labor market is unwelcome, and that they would be using their power to prevent it. So does that mean they're going to do a 0.5 point rate cut in the next week? We don't know. We have to wait and see. Remember what I said, guys. If they do that, that is, version 2.0 of the panic button. They didn't do the emergency rate cut when we had the big drop in the stock market in the beginning of August. That didn't happen. But what might happen is they may actually come out with this 0.5 point rate cut next week in order to try to stop the bleeding, so to speak. And of course, people at the Fed are saying, oh, it's not a big deal. The economy is not faltering. And, we might not even need to do a 0.5 point rate cut. And a lot of people are worried that if they don't do it, then they're actually going to make this situation with the jobs market a lot worse. And if you guys take a look at this chart here, you can see just how much the jobs numbers have gone down since 2022 when we had this huge injection of cash into the economy. Things have gone down tremendously since then. And the crazy thing is this number already looks bad without the revision. Imagine how bad this August number will look after it does get revised. Here's what Christopher Waller from the Fed said about all this. He goes, the data that we have received in the past 3 days indicates that the labor market is continuing to soften but not deteriorate. And this judgment is important to our upcoming decision. But he also said that a sequence of cuts would be appropriate and an accelerating pace of the cuts would also be appropriate if they determine that the labor market is deteriorating. So basically, if they do a 0.5 point rate cut at their next meeting, that means that they are significantly more worried about the labor market than they were at their previous meeting. And if they just do the 1/4 point rate cut, it could just mean they either are not worried about it or they are, but they just want to keep that on the down low because they don't want to spook everyone, including the stock market, which saw a pretty bad ending at the end of this previous week. And we look at the private jobs reports, it actually gets even worse than that, because when you look at the ADP payroll numbers, U.S. businesses generated just 99,000 new jobs in August, which is literally the smallest increase in jobs since the beginning of 2021, guys. What was happening back in the beginning of 2021? We were still in the midst of the pandemic, okay? So we weren't seeing a whole lot of jobs being created back then. Yet things are just as bad now as they were then. That is horrible. Economists who were polled by the Wall Street Journal forecasted 140,000 job gain, and it was only 99,000, guys. What a miss. Almost 50% less than what these guys were predicting it would be. So that just goes to show you how out of touch with reality a lot of these economists are as well. Like, they think things are still going relatively well, but that's actually not the case. All we need now is the layoffs to continue to spike, and we'll be in a full-blown recession, guys. Nobody will be able to deny that anymore, including the politicians and all these economists, because job openings have fallen so sharply that it's taking people a lot longer to find work right now. And how can we have job openings in just as bad of a situation as we saw in the middle of a pandemic? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. If that doesn't tell you the economy is weak, I don't know what does. And right away, of course, they're saying, well, you know, because unemployment went down to 4.2% from 4.3%, then there's at least some positive news here. Well, yeah, it might have went down a little bit, but it's not like it went down that much, guys. Like, it is still much higher than it was a year ago. It's not like it dropped back down to a number in the threes. They're saying most of the new jobs were created in education, healthcare, and construction, and employment fell the most in manufacturing, information, and professional businesses. Even with the government numbers, you know, it was expected that they were going to come out with 161,000 new jobs, but it ended up only being 142,000 new jobs. So not as much of a miss as the private sector, but still was less than expected, guys. And this is before the revision. This is something that you always have to remember. This is happening before the numbers get revised down, inevitably. And then you have people out there saying, oh, don't worry, you know, don't panic about the jobs numbers. This doesn't mean that we're going to be hitting a recession. You know, things are still good. You know, we're just recovering from the pandemic still. That's like the excuse for this. That's really the only excuse they have left, is to say things like that at this point. You guys are just as well aware as I am that there's a major push to make everything go electric in the next decade or two across the globe. And one way that they're trying to do that is with renewable energy sources. And one of the most popular renewable energy sources today are solar panels. And solar panels are actually predicted to be the largest source of renewable energy starting in the 2030s. And here's the kicker. Every single solar panel needs silver in order to work. They use silver paste in every single web in every panel that turns the sunlight into power. And a lot of smart investors are already taking advantage of this and purchasing silver. You guys have known for a long time that I am a big proponent of owning physical gold and silver in order to protect your wealth. Well, that's where today's video sponsor, Noble Gold, comes in. With the silver IRA, for example, you can surf this incredible wave of growth, and it doesn't matter who sits in the White House or what Wall Street does. Solar is going to be the future of electric, and silver is the secret weapon to it. So don't let this opportunity slip through your hands. Make sure you visit my link down in the description below at bordinarogold.com, and you may get up to 10 free ounces of silver with a qualifying IRA. So make sure to use my link below, visit Noble Gold, and pick up some physical gold and silver today. Say just because the job market's slowing down doesn't mean we're in a recession. People who are in the no recession camp say just look at, you know, what happened at the beginning of August. You know, the stock market took a big hit on fears of a recession, and that didn't happen, and then things rebounded. Well, now it's starting to go back down. So what are they going to say about that? You know, it's a lot of volatility lately. Here's something funny this story says. If slowing job growth doesn't turn into mounting losses, the economy could squeak by. So I guess that's the goal, right? We just want to squeak by as an economy. You know, it's just kind of like the guy that does the bare minimum just to not get fired, right? Is that what you want to do? No, of course not. We want to have a flourishing economy where everyone is benefiting from it and doing well. So this to me suggests that even people who are bullish on the future of the economy don't believe that things are going to be very strong, even if the job market doesn't completely disintegrate. So then I ask you, what argument do you have moving forward that things are going to go well if we don't have any solid economic data to base that on? Right now, nationwide, there are 7.7 million job openings at the end of July, which is down 1.1 million since the beginning of the year, and it's also the lowest since January of 2021, guys. Back to this figure, the lowest since in the middle of the pandemic, the amount of jobs that are available. And remember, a lot of these jobs aren't actually available either. A lot of these jobs are ghost listings. Many of you have asked me to talk about this before. I actually did make a video about this a couple months back when I was in Illinois. And, you know, I covered different stories about how all these job listings are fake. And a lot of these companies are using these job listings to actually collect data on people to submit an application. They get all your data, then they can turn around and sell that data. You know, there's no actual intention of, giving you a job is just to get you to apply and collect all the information about you. And unfortunately, you don't even know if someone's trying to do this to you or not, especially if you're desperate, you're a job seeker trying to get hired. You're going to make as many applications as possible. But realize every time you do that, people get a hold of your personal information. A lot of these other ghost job listings are just there to make the company look good, to make it look like they're hiring, but they actually have no intention of hiring people. Something else I covered the other day is a lot of these job listings are going up, getting people to apply, and then if they feel like they get too many people applying, then they will take the listing down and then put it back up with a lower starting salary in order to get people hired at a lower pay than originally promised. So there are lots of shenanigans happening with these job openings right now. So if they're already at the lowest level since the middle of the pandemic and half of them are fake, what does that tell you? It tells you that this whole job market is based on a lie right now. And some people are saying, well, we might still have a soft landing, but it's just going to be turbulent. And there's sectors of the economy that are experiencing a recession, like housing and manufacturing, but other than that, things are going swell. And also a lot of people who are in this position say that, well, it's fine because if we do start seeing further weakening in the labor market, then the Fed will just start rapidly cutting rates and that's magically going to fix everything. Well, clearly people who are saying this have never looked at an unemployment chart from the past and how that correlates with Fed rate cuts, because every single time we see emergency Fed rate cuts, that also leads to a situation where unemployment skyrockets. So if unemployment's already going up too much and the job openings are weakening and the Fed starts emergency cutting rates, that's likely to just make that situation even worse. Also, according to a new KPMG survey, they say that 60% of CEOs are unwilling to make investment decisions until after the November 5th US election, and that may add to the softness in the economy and in the hiring. So that shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody that a lot of people are just waiting and hanging out to see what's going to happen with this election. A lot of companies are uncertain of their future and what's going to happen with that. So they're just like, well, we'll just wait and see. We're freezing hiring. We're getting rid of people we don't need on top of that. We're going to run lean until we see what the election holds. But one thing that they're forgetting is that no matter what happens with this next election, that the economy is still going to be facing some significant weakness. I've been going downhill and I know I got to walk back up, but I want to come down here and give you guys this. Beautiful views never get old. Now it's time to walk back up. So in the light of all this weak economic data, one of my viewers, Saul, he wrote me an email and mentioned something that I should bring up here on the channel, which I certainly will, because he says that when you talk about the economy, you have to keep in mind that we may have been in a depression actually for the past 20 years. All undercover because people don't realize it, and here's the explanation of why, which makes perfect sense if you just hear out this information. GDP growth in the United States used to average about 4% a year until the year 2000. Then it dropped and has been an average of 2% since then. So it's 2024 now, been an average of 2% for the past 24 years. This is the definition of depression, GDP growth under trend line. We calculate GDP including government borrowing and spending on non-productive things, okay? But somehow this is included in the GDP figures. Add a correction for actual inflation, and our GDP growth during the last 3 years is actually negative, which is the definition of a recession. So Saul says that I'm right, that we have been in a recession for the past 3 years, and it's time to start looking at maybe it's actually a depression, not a recession. And the only reason maybe it doesn't look like it is because of all the stimulus, guys. But the punishment for all that stimulus is all the inflation we're experiencing right now and how high the cost of living is getting for people at an unsustainable rate. It's not like all this propping up of the economy has come at no cost or for free, and only people who already own a lot of assets have been able to benefit from all this stimulus, while everyone else is getting completely ripped off and a lot poorer because of it. And I covered earlier about all the shenanigans going on with the job market. Well, how about this? You're also seeing a lot of people just getting their hours cut instead of getting fired right now, which almost hurts just as bad because people have bills to pay, and if they're not getting enough hours at their primary job, they may be forced to go and seek out a second job. One of my viewers wrote me, she's a nurse at a hospital here in Sacramento, and it's a nonprofit hospital. Remember that for later in the story, okay? As a full-time employee, and 8-hour shifts are in her contract. This year, the company stated that it has been implementing patient-staff ratios. So the nursing floor doesn't have enough patients, at least 10 patients per one certified nurse, then management sends you home. So she's showing up to work for 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours, sometimes they even send her home at 7 hours. Not being able to fulfill her 40-hour work week has been difficult because she has expenses and bills to pay just like everybody else. She says complaints have been made with her union, nothing's being done about it, and these nonprofit hospitals are being run as businesses. Not only is this hurting her livelihood, but it's basically a sneaky way of making the employment numbers also look good. We're not firing people, we're just giving them less hours and paying them less, making their lives more difficult. They're not getting paid as much at a time when they need more money more than ever. So she asked me to share this here on the channel, as I just did. You're also seeing a lot of this same tactics happen with the fast food places that are now required here in California to pay $20 an hour. I discussed this maybe a month ago. A lot of these restaurants are just choosing to give people less hours. You even have owners of these franchises picking up some shifts from their employees so they don't have to pay those extra hours. They're not firing people in a lot of cases, they're just giving them less hours. And to just show you how bad the jobs market is doing right now, last month, US employers let go of more than 75,000 employees. That's a 193% increase just from the 1 month before, guys. So the amount of people who are losing jobs right now is literally skyrocketing. So it's interesting that these unemployment figures actually went down 1/10 of a percentage point at a time when this many people are losing jobs. And the education sector is actually getting hit pretty hard by this as well. Education jobs got cut by 25,400 jobs from the beginning of the year through August. That's up 222% from the previous year. You also have a ton of tech layoffs right now, and all these people are losing jobs at a time when it's really tough to find a new job, because we already talked about how many openings there are that are going down to pandemic levels of job openings. Half of those job openings are fake to keep up appearances for the company or to harvest your data. So where does that leave the average job seeker today? You know, many of you have written me emails talking about how you filled out hundreds or even thousands of applications and haven't been able to land the job that you're looking for. That is not a sign of a strong economy or a strong labor market right now. You know, sometimes people say, oh, you're exaggerating, Michael. It's not as bad as you're making it sound. Well, I'm not exaggerating at all. Maybe my tone comes off as exaggerating because I like to speak in a direct and powerful way. But I'm just giving you guys the facts. This is data that anybody can go out and look at and find for themselves. I'm not reporting anything proprietary here. I'm just reporting the facts of where things are right now in the US economy. And the only difference between me and people who think things are going well when they read this data is they're trying to find loopholes to interpret this data in a positive manner. You know, trying to make it sound like it's not as bad as it really is. But when you have these job expectations being off as much as they are from the real numbers, and then the revisions coming in and bringing them down even further a month or two later, that is not good, guys. So for anybody to sit there and say that it is and try to turn around and make that a positive is trying to just, live in a make-believe world. Whenever they do eventually call this recession official, you can almost guarantee that they're gonna go back and pinpoint around this time in 2024 as the official start of the recession. But hey, what do I know? I'm just exaggerating, right? Anyways, I hope people who like hearing the truth actually enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I will see you in the next one.